Let me just say my story really quick. I was raised in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I was raised by 2 parents who were converts to the church. We lived in all up and down the East Coast, so we were sort of, um, on our we weren't on our own. There were plenty of other, uh, Mormons or LDS people that lived in the surrounding areas, but, we had to drive, like, a half an hour to church and things like that. So we weren't it wasn't like every town had its own LDS meeting house. So when I was 40 years old when I left the faith, and up until that point, I had been I would I would say that I was extremely devout, and I tried not to. Sometimes people are so devout that they start doing extra things, and to me, that didn't necessarily make you devout. I To me, that seemed like sometimes kind of like what the Pharisees would do in the Bible, or the things that Jesus would call people out doing, where they're just sort of doing religious, like, they're being showy with their religion. So I tried to keep things, it's not like I don't know, it's not like I would get upset at people for drinking caffeine, or something like that, or it's not like, there were some LDS people who would extra display how righteous they were, and they wouldn't necessarily display it, like, out on their house or something like that, or on their clothing, but they would definitely, like, I don't know, they'd mention it in Sunday school or something about, "Well, you know, I don't let my family drink caffeine," or "I don't let," that kind of thing. Anyway, I'm totally getting ahead of myself. If you're not familiar with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or, people are called Mormons, I was not in the religion where there was still the practice of polygamy. That was long gone. It's gone, like, by 100 years or something. So I was not in that faith. There are groups of people who are also considered Mormons. They call themselves Mormons, but they're not from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as it stands, the one that has its headquarters in Salt Lake, and it has 13 or more million members. So that's the one I was in, the big one. Um, okay, so I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. We can talk about that more later if anyone's interested. We can definitely talk about that. But what I wanted to talk about today was how I feel like I feel like I'm a better person because I'm learning to be more loving. Okay, so here's something funny. So in about 12 years ago, I was on this dating website called LDS Singles, and LDS stands for Latter-day Saints, so LDS, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So if I say LDS Mormon, uh, people so the new current president of the church has made it clear how important it is to say the entire name of the church every time you say it, but it's a mouthful. It's like, I don't know, 20 syllables or something like that, maybe 14. It's a lot. So anyway, um I will try to be respectful of that, but I will probably call myself either LDS or Mormon just to make it easy, because I don't think that this podcast really isn't intended for LDS people. I mean, if they want to listen in, they're welcome to, but I don't want to shake anyone's faith here. That's the other thing. I When I was practicing in that in that faith, I definitely didn't ever wanna hear what people had to say who had left the church because, inside the church, we were encouraged not to listen to those people, and I think because a lot of those people can be very convincing, and it's, maybe a little threatening, but the point is I also don't wanna shake anyone's faith because while I was in the faith, I felt very much like it was helping me and keeping me grounded and happy. It gave me a direction, and it was very supportive. Uh, there was a time in my life where I was a single mom, and the church is very generous, and the the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has and a wonderful welfare program. They help people, like, there were times when I couldn't pay my rent and the church stepped in. There were times when I didn't have food and the church stepped in, and they were and it was never judgmental, like, so one time, I would say there was I wouldn't say I didn't have food. I needed help paying rent, so they said, "Well, go get a food order." So this is what's so cool. So in in Utah, they have these places called the bishop's storehouse. So a bishop is the person that is like the church is divided into wards, and like wards would be one congregation. So and then the leader of that congregation would be a bishop. And they're just lay people. So your bishop could be a lawyer, he could be an auto mechanic, but he's not getting paid for what he does. And it's like, it probably takes him about 40 hours a week of volunteer time of service to the members of the congregation. So anyway, so I guess it's just called the bishop's storehouse, and it's using uh a term that they used to use from back in the 1800s or something. Anyway, so the Bishop's Storehouse, it's amazing. It's like this grocery store. So you just go in and you have a shopping cart, and there's like a little old lady or a little old man that comes, and they're a volunteer, and they come and they first of all, the one that met with me, she reassured me. She's like, "Honey, God is the source of all we have." Ooh, that's my alarm. Um, She said, "God is the source of all we have. So it doesn't matter if you get your food from here or the regular grocery store, if you have $1,000,000 or you have nothing." She's like, "It's all from God or Heavenly Father. So you have every right to be here, and don't think for a second that you're doing something wrong or that I don't want you to feel ashamed. I want you to feel good about where you are because there's nothing wrong with the circumstance you're in." And I just thought that was so loving and kind and good. And there are so many just genuinely kind LDS people. And anyway, so you just go through the shopping, this little grocery store, and she helps you put stuff in your cart, and then they total it up, and they keep track of it. They're Mor- Mormons are very good at keeping records. And anyway, I just had a fridge and a pantry, like, full of food, and then my rent was paid for that month, and that happened. I only did the food order the one time, but there were lots of times that the church helped me out of jams, and then, of course, you're always encouraged that when you have extra that you give and help other people, and so I did my best to pay it forward as often as I could. And I still think, like, I would have no hesitation donating money to the church welfare system. Even though I'm no longer in the faith, I would donate to them in a heartbeat because they do such an excellent job of of distributing and everything. So it's really it's like one of the wonders of the world, I think. So so I was very devout LDS until, one day there was I had a so one of my children was well, we'll just say, you know, my children represent all the colors of the rainbow, and at the time, I had a child that had come out as gay, and then the church around the time that the Supreme Court allowed gay marriage, the church sort of had this reactionary moment where they kept having Sunday school lessons and all sorts of things like, "You can't like, gay people can't get married," and it was like, "Yeah, we know." And, like or, "If you're gay, you can't get married in the temple," and we were like, "Yeah, we know." And it was just but it was particularly hard to take because they just kept reminding us how important it was for gay people to not get married. And I had a gay child at the time and it just felt a little bit like knife twisty. So so we were just sort of dealing with that and then all of a sudden there was like this leak and this was around the time that a lot of people left the church and the leak had to do with a new policy that came out where it said that children of gay parents who were gay married and gay were not allowed to be blessed, which is a little bit like so it's like a little bit like a christening. So you bring your baby to church and they're blessed. Um but then And then when children are 8, they can be baptized. So it's a little bit different than some other Christian faiths. But this new policy said that children of gay marriage could not be blessed or baptized. They couldn't be baptized when they were 8. They had to wait till they were 18 and disavowed the practice of gay marriage, which seems silly to me because it's not like just because you're gay and you have a child, that doesn't mean that the child is gonna grow up to be gay. So anyway, it felt It felt even more like the knife was being twisted, and I was already having some struggles with doing m as my husband calls it, the mental gymnastics of being in the church, and so I just it was I felt like, the church said, "Well, we're making this policy out of love. This is a loving policy." And I think what they're thinking was, we don't want anyone to be baptized with the wrong ideas because then they will be subject to condemnation. And so it's out of love because we don't want these children to grow up and then be condemned for believing and practicing gay marriage at some point. So I was like, "Oh, is it love or Is it love or a PR nightmare? I don't really know, because it seemed to me like the church really was maybe more concerned about having a gay couple sitting in the audience at church while their baby was blessed and having it be a celebratory thing, but then having people in the ward or the congregation looking at the gay couple who seem happy and then thinking that's a good idea or thinking that's okay. That's what I That's what I personally felt. So, anyway, I don't wanna offend anyone, but it seemed like the church was saying it was for love when it really was maybe more for their own feelings about something else. And and my kids were going through a lot of stuff because you know, my we like they were in a divorced family and stuff, and I was like, "We don't need more we don't need any more messages that like when we're saying something is love for it to be more confusing." Like love should not be confusing. Um at least as far as parental love and love in general, that should not be confusing. So, it was one of those situations where we just said, "Okay," or I said, "You've just made it really easy for me, and now I need to go." And there's no hard feeling well, not really any hard feelings. I'm not angry about leaving the church, but it was time to go. And so, okay, so here we go. Fast forward, it's been almost 10 years since that happened. And I it's been a journey for me. And I think that one of the things that makes me a better person, it really doesn't make me a better person. I feel happier in many ways, but of course I still have I mean, that was 40 years that I was raised in the church. So so many things by the time you're age 7 really get encoded in who you are as a person. You make choices based on what you were worried about when you were 5. So there's been a lot of opportunities for me to unravel some things and unpack some things, and it's been a fascinating and interesting journey, which if anyone's interested, we can talk about later. But I want to just name a couple of things that have helped me. So when oh my gosh, that was a big tangent. I said that I was on LDS Singles. It was a dating website, dating service, and I met a lot of great people through there actually. But on LDS Singles, on my profile, I said, "I'm non-judgmental." This is what's so funny because it's like, oh, it was like God and the universe were like, "Oh, you think you're non-judgmental, huh? Okay. How about this? How about this?" And there have been all sorts of things that have happened in my family and come to light in my family that have been a real struggle for me to wrap my head around because probably from a lot of coding, from, a lot of influence from the church, but a lot of influence from cultural things outside the church as well. But things where I've had to ask myself, "Oh, so you think you're a loving person, huh? You think you're non-judgmental. Well, why don't how do you feel about one of your kids being transgender? How do you feel about this? How do you feel about this?" And it's been like kind of a steamroller of all kinds of things that have come up as things that I need to, like, face and be honest with myself and learn how to love just more openly. And so I would say probably the one thing, if I could say that one thing has made me a better person, and I'm really not a better person, I'm just, I've learned more. This has helped me grow. I've grown as a person outside of the church, and one of the biggest ways is just learning to love and accept everyone on their journey. I'm not I'm not saying that I do yet or that I'm really great at it. But this year particularly, I've been saying things like anytime someone shows up in my life that's like bothering me or whatever, I simply will say or if my kids are making choices that really make me nervous, like I'm not gonna put my kids under the bus throw my kids under the bus here, but if they're making any choices that I'm like, "Ooh, I wouldn't make that choice." I just think, "I honor your path. I love you and I honor your path, and you're allowed to be on whatever path you choose to be on this planet. This is your life, you get to choose." And that's really, really, really helped me. I feel like number 1, it's taken away all the stress and anxiety that I somehow am responsible for their choices. I need to be there for I well, I want to be there. They're all adults, by the way. I want to be there however I can to help them to, help them pick up the pieces, whatever. And I also want them to feel love coming from me. And I want to give them the space that they need to make their own mistakes. Because I would say that when they were younger, I don't want to blame the church. It was also my own anxieties of trying to fit in. But it was this I think I did a lot of trying to control their behavior so that they would fit in to a box that I thought was a good box. And it's been a journey for me to let that go and realize that they don't have to fall into that box. They can be in any box that they want. And the interesting thing is and we can talk about this more, but I've also sort of opened up my idea. I would say that at first when I left the church, my spirituality sort of closed and I was like, I don't know, I guess there's nothing after this life. I guess that I guess this is it. And when we die, we're done for. But that has changed also. So my spiritual ideas have definitely expanded and I've allowed in for more understanding or more possibility. I don't need to know anything as much as before but now I've opened my mind to allow for more just expansiveness in my spirituality, I guess you could say. And I still believe in that we're a soul, that we're eternal. And so that's helped me too with knowing that how people view us is that's not the ceiling of being worthy, right? Like being worthy has nothing to do with how society views us. Not really. Being worthy is being worthy of love and being worthy of the experiences we want. And that is more of an unmovable idea. Like I've opened my mind to the possibility that we're all just unconditionally worthy. And it's like, that's a little bit more expansive. And so that started to give me the ability to allow for everyone to have different experiences, everyone to choose to experience their life in their own way, even though I might not prefer what they're doing. It gives me like, it gives me the ability, this more expansive idea gives me the ability to allow for all kinds of experiences and believe that we won't be judged for those things. Okay, so thanks for joining me for tea. That's it for today. I think we're going to wrap up here. How long was I talking? Oh, 26 minutes. Okay, we don't want to go too long. If you're ever interested and you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments. If this has been helpful for you at all, I'd love to know. And let's talk more tomorrow.